Good stuff. Yeah, well, again, thank you guys so much for coming. I'm really excited, really happy to be here. This talk on cancer here is something that I've wanted to do for a really long time, so I'm very, very happy to share it with you guys. And so today, you'll see I have a little bit of outline. I'll talk a little bit about my story, talk a little bit about what is cancer, kind of what I think it is, and talk a little bit, like I said, I like to call myself a myth buster. So I like to bust a lot of these myths that are out there about nutrition and about cancer. So we're going to talk about a couple of those myths and kind of talk about, what the next steps are for you guys going forward in kind of this whole journey around cancer. So what's my story? I grew up in Wisconsin, as I was saying before, and my dad is a chiropractic neurologist, so health and healing was always a big part of my life growing up. And somehow, I would go home when I was in high school, go home from school and be reading these nutrition books, and somehow I didn't realize that's what I wanted to do with myself. I don't know how. So somehow I decided I wanted to do engineering and came out here at MIT and studied mechanical engineering. It took me a couple of years to realize that wasn't what I wanted to do with myself at all. So then, I find myself MIT grad, what am I going to do with myself? Kind of starting to realize that I'd like to, work with people on nutrition and work with people, kind of in the same vein like my dad does. So that was a whole process of figuring out what I wanted to do. And then, it was scary. I had an engineering job and everybody thought I was an engineer. So kind of having that whole identity transformation of, jumping out into something new. So I was doing that, got certified as a health coach, started coaching people. And, mostly coaching men around, helping them lose 10 or 20 pounds and helping them increase their energy throughout the day, working them on adrenal fatigue, things like that. But that really didn't seem right either. That was, something wasn't quite right there. And I realized that I had this passion to work with people who have cancer inside of me, even though it was kind of a scary thing at first, kind of deciding that I wanted to get into it. Cancer seems like it's this big serious thing, and it seems like, life or death. Like, what if, I don't want to be responsible for, giving somebody with cancer bad advice. So that was, it's been a process for me. It's been kind of a reluctant journey of me getting into this, but I have this passion inside, I have this calling, I'd call it a spiritual calling, to work with people, to help support people who have cancer. So that's where I find myself today. Cancer Dudes Live More is what I do. So it's definitely been an interesting journey. I just finally realized I've got all this knowledge. I've got this knowledge about nutrition and supplements and all the other holistic pieces, parts of healing. And people need to know this information, Like we were saying before, 1 in 2 women now are going to get cancer in their lifetime. 1 in 2 men are going to get cancer. And so people need this information. So despite my reluctance, I sat myself down and, put together a program for 4 months, step by step, that I take people with cancer, take them through, and kind of show them the blueprint, what they need to kind of transform their whole lives and really make the changes they need to make. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. So you're in the right place today. Obviously, if you're interested in cancer, if the thought of cancer is, causing you stress and anxiety, if you have some confusion about anything around nutrition or supplements or, and how that all relates to cancer. And maybe you're frustrated about some of the information that is out there. You're frustrated that you don't have enough information about cancer. And, generally, I think you're going to learn some things too if you could just generally use some more energy in your day-to-day. We're going to be talking a little bit about that today when we talk about the foods and some of the different things like that. And really what I like to talk about with people is how to feed your body, how to nourish your soul, and how to starve the cancer cells. So we've got a limited amount of time today. I'm going to give you guys as much info as I can. You're probably going to be overwhelmed with all the information I throw at you. And some of you are going to want to take this further. I'll show you how to do that afterwards at the end, before we finish if you want to. But kind of my intention is to really radically revolutionize the way you guys think about food and how it relates to cancer. And for me to do that, I really need you to be here 100%, as if your life depends on it, because it does, literally. Depending on how we eat, if we change how we eat, food coming in the form of actual food and food coming in all the other sources of nourishment that we have in our lives, changing how we eat can really change your life, because what you eat gets absorbed into your body, gets digested, gets absorbed into your blood, it turns into your cells, it turns into your organs, it even turns into your thoughts. Obviously, if you're eating sugar, you drink alcohol, you eat a steak, you eat broccoli, it changes your mental state. So food is very important, and that's why I'm excited to talk about some of the most important things having to do with food and cancer today. And really, like I said, everything that we take in is food for our body and our mind and our spirit. So not just the primary food or secondary food. Sometimes the actual food can be secondary when you're being nourished by all these other different parts of your life, which we're going to touch on today. So what is cancer? Who can give me a definition of what cancer is? Anybody?
Abnormal cells. Abnormal cell division or rapid division. Cells that are normal but not. Cells that don't die.
Cells that can't shut themselves off. Just keep producing. Just go into it.
Cells with low oxygen levels.
What did they tell you, Ron, when you were, or did they tell you? Yeah. So what is cancer? Cancer occurs, say you have a normal cell, say you have a cell in your liver or something, and every 6 weeks that cell is, different periods of time for different cells, but it reproduces, and the old cell is supposed to die off. But what happens in cancer is that old cell doesn't die off. It doesn't go through the process of apoptosis, programmed cell death, and so then it stays alive, and then the second cell keeps multiplying and multiplying and multiplying, and so then you've got all of these cells multiplying, and they don't die. So you've kind of got this mass of cells that's starting to grow. Now this, in and of itself, is not a bad thing. All of us have cancer. All of us have cancer cells floating around in our body. So I have cancer, you have cancer, Cheryl, everybody here has cancer cells. But the thing is, with people that don't have a cancer diagnosis, is our immune system is able to take care of that, little group of cells. If it's 100 cells, 500 cells, the white blood cells can gobble it up and take care of it, so it's not a problem. Now, what happens with cancer is if a person's immune system is depressed for a variety of reasons, then the immune system doesn't have the fighting power to take down that little mass of cancer cells that's starting to grow. And so it starts to grow and grow even more, and it starts to get to 1,000 cells and 5,000 cells and 10,000 cells. And around that point, it starts to create kind of this acidic slime layer around it. And at that point, like we were saying, then it doesn't survive on oxygen. So it's an anaerobic environment that this little cancer mass has inside of this acidic slime layer, and kind of then starts to take on a life of its own, starts to create cells of its own that fight off the body's immune system. It starts growing and growing and growing, and you're not even going to see a cancer diagnosis until it reaches 1 million cells, which is only the size of a pinhead. It's very small. And kind of this whole story is really key why you need to have your body's immune system as strong as possible. And this is one of the things that I really help my clients with is, how can you support your immune system the best you can if you have cancer, so your body has that maximum healing potential. Because that's crucially important, you know, if you've got a cancer diagnosis, is building up the immune system as much as possible. You know, especially if you're going through chemotherapy or something like that, that's going to depress the immune system very heavily. Doing everything you can to build up the immune system is very important. Now, the other kind of interesting piece that I like to think about with cancer is, you know, the idea that other things can be cancers too. So, you know, when it comes down to the cancer cells, you've got the cell that reproduces, and the other cell is supposed to die off. And I would argue that all these different things, there's all these different things in our life that we're hanging on to that we should be letting go of. So there's, you know, something like negative emotions, fear and blame and guilt and shame and all this stuff, and we hang on to it. You know, we're supposed to let it go. It's supposed to have this apoptosis, and we're just supposed to, you know, let that negative emotion die, but we hang on to things like this. And so, you know, I have even done a lot of work myself with these things in my own life that I'd considered cancers. You know, a variety of things, but probably the biggest thing that I really have been overcoming recently is just this belief stemming back from childhood, you know, that sometime I told myself this story that I wasn't worthy enough for my dad and I wasn't deserving of his love, and this was, you know, really holding me back for a long time. And it took a lot of help with different coaches and mentors that I was working with to really first become aware of this, you know, become aware of some of these things, and then, you know, then to be able to let go of it. So I would just put that out there to you guys. You know, what's kind of a cancer in your life? You know, what's something that you could let go of that would be helpful for you in achieving that next stage, as we were saying. So just something to think about.